Part 1. The Innocent Beginning. Lisa was having the best weekend she'd had in months. After working long hours at her office job for weeks, she finally had a chance to get away from the city with her family. They packed up their car and drove 3 hours to a beautiful camping spot near the mountains. The air was fresh, the trees were tall, and for the first time in forever, Lisa felt like she could actually breathe. Her 2 kids, ages 8 and 10, were running around exploring everything they could find. They built a fort out of fallen branches, collected pretty rocks, and spent hours playing by the small creek that ran through the campground. Lisa's husband was busy setting up their tent and getting the campfire ready for dinner. It was one of those perfect family moments that you see in movies. The weather was just right for camping, not too hot during the day and cool enough at night that they needed light jackets around the fire. Lisa loved watching her children discover new things in nature. They found interesting bugs, spotted different birds, and even saw a family of deer walking through their campsite early in the morning. On Saturday night, they roasted marshmallows and told silly stories around the campfire. The kids were laughing so hard they could barely catch their breath. Lisa felt so happy and relaxed. She had forgotten how good it felt to be away from emails, phone calls, and endless meetings. This was exactly what their family needed. Sunday. Morning came too quickly. They packed up their camping gear, cleaned their campsite, and started the drive back home. The kids fell asleep in the back seat, tired from all their adventures. Lisa was already planning their next camping trip before they even got home. When they arrived at their house, everyone was exhausted but happy. They unpacked their dirty clothes and camping equipment. Lisa started a load of laundry while her husband helped the kids get cleaned up. It had been such a wonderful weekend that she was already missing the peaceful sounds of nature. That evening, while Lisa was getting ready for bed, she noticed something on her left arm. There was a small red bump about the size of a pencil, eraser. It looked exactly like every other bug bite she had gotten during camping trips over the years. She wasn't surprised at all. When you spend time outdoors, especially near water like they had, you're bound to get a few bug bites. The bite was on her forearm, right where she might have brushed against some bushes while helping the kids explore. It was slightly red and a little bit itchy, but nothing out of the ordinary. Lisa had gotten hundreds of similar bites throughout her life. Growing up, she spent most of her summers outside, and bug bites were just part of being active outdoors. She went to the bathroom cabinet and found some anti-itch cream that she kept for situations just like this. She rubbed a small amount on the bite and figured that would take care of it. Within a few minutes, the itching stopped, and she didn't think about it again. She was too tired from the weekend to worry about one tiny bug bite. Monday morning came, early. Lisa's alarm went off at 6 in the morning, and she had to get herself and the kids ready for another busy week. She made breakfast, packed lunches, and drove the children to school before heading to her office downtown. Her mind was focused on the presentation she had to give that afternoon and the 3 meetings she had scheduled before lunch. At work, Lisa threw herself back into her routine. She had emails to answer, reports to review, and phone calls to make. Her job as a marketing coordinator kept her busy from the moment she arrived until she left each evening. She barely had time to eat lunch most days, let alone think about a small bug bite on her arm. The bite was still there when she got dressed that morning, but it looked normal to her. Maybe a little red, maybe a tiny bit swollen, but exactly what she would expect from a fresh mosquito bite. She had put on a long-sleeved shirt for work anyway, so she couldn't even see it throughout the day. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in the same blur of activity. Lisa was juggling work deadlines, helping her kids with homework, cooking dinner, and trying to keep up with household chores. She was the kind of person who stayed busy and didn't slow down very often. Taking care of everyone else always came first, and she rarely paid attention to small things like bug bites or minor aches and pains. By Thursday, Lisa realized the bite was still there. She noticed it when she was getting dressed in the morning. Most bug bites would have started to fade by now, but this one looked about the same as it had on Sunday night. She wasn't worried, though. Sometimes bites take longer to heal, especially if you scratch them or if your skin is sensitive. She applied more anti-itch cream and went about her day. Her presentation earlier in the week had gone well, and her boss had complimented her work on a big project. Lisa was feeling good about things at the office, and her kids were doing great in school. Life was busy but good. Friday evening, Lisa's family decided to order pizza and watch a movie together. It was their weekly tradition when everyone was too tired to cook. While they were sitting on the couch, Lisa absently rubbed the spot on her arm where the bite was. It felt a little different than she remembered, maybe slightly firmer, but she didn't think much about it. The weekend came and went with the usual activities. Soccer practice for her youngest, a birthday party for her oldest, grocery shopping, and cleaning the house. Lisa was always moving, always taking care of something or someone. She was the type of person who felt guilty sitting still for too long. By the following Monday, exactly 1 week after their camping trip, Lisa noticed that the bite hadn't improved at all. If anything, it might have looked a little darker around the edges. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, looking at it more carefully than she had before. The center was still red, but the area around it had developed a slightly different color. It wasn't dramatically different, just enough that she noticed it when she really looked. Lisa tried to remember what other bug bites had looked like after a week, but honestly, she had never paid this much attention to one before. She pressed gently around the area and noticed that the skin felt a bit firmer than the skin around it. Not hard exactly, but definitely different. Lisa wondered if maybe she had scratched it in her sleep, or if it had gotten irritated by her clothes rubbing against it. At work that day, Lisa found herself thinking about the bite more than usual. During a boring meeting, she caught herself touching the area through her sleeve. She wasn't worried exactly, but she was starting to pay attention to it in a way she hadn't before. That evening, while helping her kids with their homework, Lisa's daughter asked her why she kept touching her arm. Lisa hadn't even realized she was doing it. She laughed and said it was just a bug bite from their camping trip, nothing important. But later that night, she found herself looking at it again in the bathroom mirror. The bite was definitely not healing the way she expected. Lisa had gotten plenty of mosquito bites over the years, and they usually started to fade and disappear within a few days. This one seemed to be staying the same, or maybe even changing in ways that were hard to describe. She decided to give it a few more days. After all, everyone heals differently, and she had been under a lot of stress at work lately. Sometimes, stress can make your body slower to heal from minor injuries. Lisa was always telling other people to not worry about small things, and she tried to follow her own advice. But as she lay in bed that night, Lisa found herself thinking about the camping trip and trying to remember exactly when and where she might have gotten the bite. She remembered helping her kids climb over some fallen logs near the creek. She remembered sitting on the ground while they had their picnic lunch. There were so many opportunities to get bitten by bugs during a weekend spent entirely outdoors. The thing was, Lisa couldn't actually remember getting bitten. Usually you feel it when a mosquito bites you, or at least you notice the itching right away. But she couldn't recall any specific moment when she felt a bug bite her arm. She had just noticed the bump later, after they got home. As Lisa drifted off to sleep, she told herself she was being silly. It was just a bug bite. People get them all the time. There was no reason to worry about something so common and harmless. Tomorrow she would probably forget all about it again, just like she had for most of the past week. But deep in the back of her mind, a tiny voice was starting to whisper that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't quite as normal as she wanted it to be. Part 2. Growing concern. The second week after the camping trip started like any other week for Lisa. She woke up early, made coffee, and got the kids ready for school. But when she was getting dressed, she stopped and really looked at the spot on her arm. Something was definitely different. What had started as a small red bump was now noticeably larger. Not huge, but clearly bigger than it had been just a few days ago. The shape was also changing. Instead of being round like a typical bug bite, it was becoming more oval with edges that weren't perfectly smooth. Lisa touched it gently and noticed the texture felt different too. The skin in the center was still red, but the area around it had developed a darker ring. It reminded Lisa of a target, with different colored circles spreading outward from the middle. She had never seen a bug bite look like this before, but then again she had never paid this much attention to one either. At breakfast, Lisa's husband noticed her rubbing her arm through her shirt sleeve. "Still bothering you?" he asked while pouring orange juice for the kids. Lisa nodded but didn't want to make a big deal about it in front of the children. They were already running late for school, and she had an important meeting at work that morning. During her commute to the office, Lisa found herself thinking about the bite more than she wanted to. Every time she stopped at a red light, she would roll up her sleeve slightly and glance down at it. The darker ring around the edges seemed more obvious in the bright morning sunlight streaming through her car window. At work, Lisa tried to focus on her tasks, but she kept getting distracted. During her team meeting, she caught herself absent-mindedly touching the area through her sleeve. Her colleague sitting next to her noticed and whispered, "You okay? You seem fidgety today." Lisa just smiled and said she was fine, but inside, she was starting to feel genuinely concerned. On her lunch break, Lisa went to the bathroom and rolled up her sleeve to get a better look. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, the bite looked even more unusual. The center was now a deep reddish-brown color, and the surrounding area had developed an irregular dark border that seemed to fade into her normal skin tone. The whole thing was now about the size of a nickel. Lisa took out her phone and snapped a quick photo. She wasn't sure why, but something told her she should document how it looked. When she looked at the picture on her phone screen, it seemed even more alarming than when she looked at it directly. The irregular shape and dark coloring were more obvious in the photograph. That evening, Lisa showed the bite to her husband, while the kids were doing homework in the living room. "Look at this," she said, rolling up her sleeve. "Does this look normal to you?" Her husband stopped what he was doing and examined her arm carefully. His expression grew serious as he looked at the mark. "Honey, this doesn't look like any bug bite I've ever seen," he said quietly. "How long has it been like this?" Lisa explained that it had been gradually changing over the past 2 weeks, but the changes had become more noticeable in the last few days. Her husband suggested she should probably have someone take a look at it, but Lisa wasn't sure. She didn't want to waste a doctor's time over what might still be nothing. That night after the kids were in bed, Lisa found herself searching online for information about unusual bug bites. She typed things like "bug bite getting bigger" and "dark ring around insect bite" into her search engine. What she found made her stomach feel uneasy. Most of the articles she read said that normal bug bites should start healing within a few days. They shouldn't keep growing or changing color dramatically. Some websites mentioned infections, allergic reactions, and other complications that could happen after bug bites. Lisa read about something called cellulitis, where the skin around a bite becomes infected and spreads. But as she kept reading, Lisa stumbled across information that made her feel genuinely frightened. Some articles mentioned that not all skin problems start as bug bites, even when they appear in places where you might expect to get bitten. She read about various skin conditions that could appear suddenly and change quickly. Lisa tried to stop herself from reading more, but she couldn't help it. The more she searched, the more worried she became. She found photos online of skin conditions that looked somewhat similar to what was happening on her arm. The irregular borders, the dark coloring, the way it was growing larger. These were all mentioned as warning signs in several articles. By the time Lisa finally closed her laptop, it was well past midnight and she was thoroughly anxious. She told herself that searching for medical information online was never a good idea. Everyone knows that internet searches can make you think you have every terrible condition imaginable. She decided to try to stop worrying and see what happened over the next few days. But sleep didn't come easily that night. Lisa lay in bed thinking about everything she had read. She found herself planning what she would say if she did decide to call a doctor. How do you explain that you're worried about a bug bite? Would they think she was overreacting? Would they be annoyed that she was wasting their time? The next morning, Lisa woke up hoping that maybe the spot would look better in daylight. But when she checked it while getting dressed, it looked exactly the same as it had the night before. If anything, the contrast between the dark edges and her normal skin seemed more pronounced. At work, Lisa had trouble concentrating on her projects. She kept thinking about the articles she had read online. During her coffee break, she went back to the bathroom and took another photo with her phone. When she compared it to the picture from the day before, she could see that the dark area had definitely gotten slightly larger. Lisa's anxiety was starting to affect other parts of her life. She was more irritable with her kids that evening, and she barely touched her dinner. Her husband asked her several times if she was feeling okay, but she didn't want to admit how worried she was becoming. Over the next few days, Lisa developed a routine of checking the spot every morning and evening. She started keeping a small notebook where she wrote down any changes she noticed. The size, the color, whether it was itchy or painful, how the skin felt when she touched it. She documented everything. By Friday of the second week, Lisa's notes showed a clear pattern. The mark was definitely growing larger and darker. The edges were becoming more irregular and the texture of the skin was changing. What had started as a slightly raised bump was now almost flat in some areas and still raised in others. Lisa also started noticing other things that might be related. Sometimes the area would feel warm to the touch, even when she wasn't touching it. Occasionally, she would feel a strange tingling sensation that seemed to radiate outward from the spot. A few times she thought the skin around it felt slightly numb, but she wasn't sure if she was imagining it. The weekend brought no relief from Lisa's growing anxiety. She found herself checking the spot obsessively, sometimes several times an hour. She would go to the bathroom just to roll up her sleeve and look at it. Her family started noticing her behavior, even though she tried to be discreet about it. On Sunday afternoon, while the family was having lunch, Lisa's 10-year-old daughter asked, "Mom, why do you keep looking at your arm? Is something wrong?" Lisa tried to brush off the question, saying it was just a bug bite from their camping trip, but her daughter's innocent question made her realize how obvious her anxiety had become. That Sunday evening, Lisa's husband sat down with her for a serious conversation. "I'm really worried about you," he said gently. "You've been stressed and distracted all week. Whatever is going on with that bite, I think you need to have someone look at it. Not just for your arm, but for your peace of mind." Lisa knew he was right. The constant worry was affecting her sleep, her work, and her family life. Even if the spot turned out to be nothing serious, she needed to do something about it. The anxiety of not knowing was becoming worse than whatever the actual problem might be. She agreed to call her doctor's office first thing Monday morning. As she made this decision, Lisa felt both relief and fear. Relief that she was finally going to take action, but fear about what she might learn. Deep down, she had a growing feeling that this wasn't going to be as simple as treating an infected bug bite. That night, Lisa looked at the spot one more time before bed. It was now roughly the size of a quarter, with irregular dark edges that seemed to blend into lighter areas. The center had developed multiple colors, reds, browns, and even some areas that looked almost black. She had to admit to herself that this looked nothing like any bug bite she had ever seen before. As she turned off the lights and tried to sleep, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she wasn't prepared for. Part 3. The doctor's visit Monday morning came, and Lisa woke up with butterflies in her stomach. She had barely slept the night before, thinking about the phone call she needed to make to her doctor's office. She kept rehearsing in her mind what she would say. "How do you explain that you're worried about a bug bite without sounding like you're overreacting?" After getting the kids ready for school and her husband off to work, Lisa sat at her kitchen table with her phone in her hand. She stared at the number for her family doctor's office, the same number she had called dozens of times over the years for routine appointments and when the kids were sick. But this felt different. This felt scary. Finally, she dialed the number. The receptionist answered with her usual cheerful voice. "Good morning, this is Valley Medical Center. How can I help you?" Lisa took a deep breath. "Hi, this is Lisa Chen. I'd like to make an appointment with Dr. Williams, please. I have something on my arm that I'm concerned about." "What kind of concern?" the receptionist asked, probably to determine how urgent the appointment needed to be. Lisa felt embarrassed as she explained. "Well, I thought it was just a bug bite from a camping trip 3 weeks ago, but it's been changing and getting bigger, and I'm starting to worry that it might be something else." The receptionist was very understanding. "Let me see what we have available." Dr. Williams has an opening this Wednesday at 2:30, or I could put you on the cancellation list for something sooner if you'd prefer. Wednesday is fine, Lisa said, even though part of her wanted to get it checked immediately. 2 more days of waiting seemed manageable, and she didn't want to seem like she was panicking over nothing. After hanging up, Lisa felt both relieved and more anxious at the same time. At least she had taken action, but now she had to wait 2 more days to find out what was really going on. She tried to focus on work that day, but found herself constantly distracted by thoughts of the upcoming appointment. Tuesday dragged by, slowly. Lisa checked the spot on her arm multiple times throughout the day, and she was almost certain it had grown slightly larger overnight. The dark edges seemed more pronounced, and she noticed that the skin in the center had developed a slightly shiny appearance that definitely wasn't normal. That evening, Lisa's husband asked her how she was feeling about the doctor's appointment. Nervous, she admitted. Part of me thinks I'm making a big deal out of nothing, but another part of me is really scared about what she might say. Her husband took her hand and squeezed it gently. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together, he said. But you're doing the right thing by getting it checked. Better to be safe than sorry. Wednesday morning arrived, and Lisa could barely eat breakfast. She kept looking at the clock, counting down the hours until her appointment. She had taken the afternoon off work, telling her boss she had a medical appointment but not going into details. Lisa arrived at the doctor's office 15 minutes early and sat in the waiting room, nervously flipping through old magazines without really reading them. She watched other patients come and go, some with obvious injuries, others who looked perfectly healthy and were probably there for routine checkups. She wondered what category she fell into. When the nurse called her name, Lisa's heart started beating faster. She followed the nurse down the familiar hallway to the examination room, the same room where she had brought her kids for countless checkups over the years. But being there, as the patient, felt completely different. The nurse took her blood pressure and temperature, both of which were slightly elevated, probably due to her nervousness. Dr. Williams will be with you in just a few minutes, the nurse said with a reassuring smile before leaving Lisa alone in the room. Lisa sat on the examination table, her legs dangling over the edge like a child. She looked around at the familiar posters about healthy eating and exercise, the same ones that had been there for years. The room smelled like disinfectant and had that clinical quietness that made every small sound seem loud. After what felt like forever, Dr. Williams knocked and entered the room. Lisa had been seeing Dr. Williams for about 5 years, ever since moving to this town. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that always made Lisa feel comfortable. But today, Lisa felt more nervous than she ever had before. "Hi, Lisa. How are you doing today?" Dr. Williams asked as she washed her hands and pulled up Lisa's chart on the computer. "I'm okay, I guess. A little nervous, actually," Lisa admitted. "Doctor." Williams turned to face her with an understanding smile. "That's completely normal. Tell me what's been going on." Lisa explained about the camping trip 3 weeks ago and how she had initially thought the spot on her arm was just a mosquito bite. She described how it had been changing over the past few weeks, getting larger and darker, and how different it looked from any bug bite she had ever had before. "Let's take a look," Dr. Williams said, pulling on latex gloves. Lisa rolled up her sleeve, exposing the spot that had been causing her so much worry. In the bright lights of the examination room, it looked even more alarming than it did at home. Dr. Williams leaned in close to examine it, her expression neutral but focused. The doctor looked at the spot from different angles, using a small magnifying glass to see the details more clearly. She measured it with a ruler, and Lisa was shocked to hear that it was now over 1 inch across. When had it gotten so big? Dr. Williams gently touched the area around the spot, checking the texture and temperature of the skin. She asked Lisa to describe any symptoms she had been experiencing: pain, itching, numbness, or any other changes. "Has this been itchy at all?" Dr. Williams asked. "Not really," Lisa replied. "Sometimes it feels warm, and occasionally I notice a tingling sensation, but it hasn't been very itchy." The doctor nodded and continued her examination. She used a special light to look at the spot more closely, and Lisa could see her studying every detail of the irregular edges and the various colors within the mark. Lisa, I want to be honest with you, Dr. Williams said, her voice gentle but serious. This doesn't look like any kind of insect bite that I've ever seen. The characteristics I'm observing, the irregular borders, the way it's been growing, and especially these color variations, these are concerning features that need to be investigated further. Lisa felt her stomach drop. What do you think it could be? Dr. Williams sat down on a rolling stool so she was at eye level with Lisa. There are several possibilities, and I don't want to speculate without more information. But what I can tell you is that any spot on the skin that changes rapidly in size, shape, or color needs to be looked at by a specialist. The doctor explained that she wanted to refer Lisa to a dermatologist, a doctor who specializes in skin conditions. I'm going to call Dr. Peterson's office this afternoon and see if we can get you an appointment as soon as possible, she said. Lisa's mind was racing. Do you think it could be? She started to ask, then stopped. She wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Dr. Williams seemed to understand what she was thinking. I know this is scary, and I know your mind is probably going to some frightening places right now, but let me be clear. We don't know what this is yet. There are many different skin conditions that can cause changes like this, and some of them are completely harmless. But even as the doctor tried to reassure her, Lisa could hear something in her voice that suggested this wasn't going to be simple. The urgency with which Dr. Williams wanted her to see a specialist told Lisa that this was being taken very seriously. The dermatologist will probably want to do a small biopsy, Dr. Williams continued. That means taking a tiny sample of the tissue to examine under a microscope. It sounds scarier than it is. It's a quick procedure, and it's the best way to get a definitive answer about what we're dealing with. Lisa nodded, trying to process all the information. A biopsy. The word sounded medical and serious and frightening. This was definitely not just a bug bite anymore. Dr. Williams spent several more minutes explaining what would happen next. She took detailed notes about the spot's appearance and history, and she even took some photographs for Lisa's medical record. She gave Lisa some information sheets about skin biopsies and what to expect from a dermatology consultation. I want you to try not to worry too much between now and your dermatology appointment, Dr. Williams said as they finished up. I know that's easier said than done, but stressing about unknowns won't help anything. We're going to figure out what this is and take care of it. As Lisa left the doctor's office, she felt like she was in a daze. She walked to her car and sat behind the steering wheel for several minutes before starting the engine. Everything felt surreal. An hour ago, she had still been hoping that the doctor would tell her it was just an unusual bug bite reaction. Now she was facing the possibility of something much more serious. On the drive home, Lisa's phone rang. It was Dr. Williams' office calling to tell her that they had spoken with the dermatologist, and she had an appointment scheduled for the next morning at 10 a.m. The urgency of getting her in so quickly made Lisa's anxiety spike even higher. That evening, Lisa sat down with her husband and told him everything that had happened at the doctor's appointment. She watched his face grow more serious as she explained about the referral to the dermatologist and the potential need for a biopsy. We're going to get through this, he said, putting his arms around her. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. But as Lisa lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. Tomorrow, she would find out what was really happening to her body, and she wasn't sure she was ready for the answer. Part 4. The Shocking Truth. Lisa barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind raced with possibilities about what the dermatologist might find. She kept touching the spot on her arm through her pajama sleeve, as if somehow it might have disappeared overnight. But when morning came and she looked at it in the bathroom mirror, it was still there, looking exactly the same as it had the day before. Her husband offered to come with her to the appointment, but Lisa decided she wanted to go alone first. She wasn't sure why, but something told her she needed to hear whatever news was coming by herself before involving anyone else. They agreed that he would stay home with the kids and she would call him as soon as the appointment was over. Dermatology office was in a medical building across town that Lisa had driven past hundreds of times but never entered. As she walked through the lobby, she noticed how many different medical specialists had offices in the building. It felt overwhelming to think about all the different health problems that brought people to this place every day. Dr. Peterson's waiting room was different from her family doctor's office. The magazines were newer, and there were several informational brochures about various skin conditions displayed on a rack near the reception desk. Lisa tried not to look at them, but she couldn't help noticing titles about skin cancer screening and treatment options. When Lisa checked in, the receptionist handed her a clipboard with several forms to fill out. The paperwork asked detailed questions about her medical history, family history of various diseases, and specific information about the skin concern that brought her in today. As she wrote down the timeline of how the spot had changed over the past 3 weeks, it seemed even more alarming seeing it all written out on paper. After about 20 minutes, a nurse called Lisa's name and led her to an examination room that looked more high-tech than her regular doctor's office. There were special lights and magnifying equipment that she assumed were used for examining skin conditions in detail. Dr. Peterson entered the room a few minutes later. She was a woman in her 40s with a professional but warm demeanor. She introduced herself and explained that she had already reviewed the notes and photos that Dr. Williams had sent over. "I understand you initially thought this was an insect bite from a camping trip," Dr. Peterson said as she washed her hands and pulled on gloves. "Can you tell me exactly when you first noticed it and how it's changed since then?" Lisa went through the whole story again, starting with the camping trip 3 weeks ago and describing how the spot had gradually grown larger and developed the irregular shape and dark coloring. Dr. Peterson listened carefully, occasionally asking follow-up questions about specific details. "Let's take a look," Dr. Peterson said, and Lisa rolled up her sleeve. The dermatologist's examination was much more thorough than what had happened at her family doctor's office. Dr. Peterson used several different magnifying devices and special lights to study every detail of the spot. She measured it again and took notes about its exact size, shape, and coloring. "I'm going to use something called a dermatoscope," Dr. Peterson explained, holding up a device that looked like a small magnifying glass with a light. "This will let me see details that aren't visible to the naked eye." As the doctor examined the spot with the special device, Lisa watched her face carefully, trying to read her expression. Dr. Peterson's face remained professionally neutral, but Lisa noticed that she spent a long time looking at the edges of the spot and took several measurements. After the examination, Dr. Peterson sat down and looked directly at Lisa. "I'm going to be very honest with you," she said. "The characteristics of this lesion are concerning. The irregular borders, the asymmetrical shape, the color variations, and the rapid growth over just 3 weeks. These are all features that we take very seriously in dermatology." Lisa felt her heart start beating faster. "What does that mean?" "Exactly?" Dr. Peterson explained that while there were several possibilities, the combination of features she was seeing made it necessary to do a biopsy immediately. "A biopsy is the only way we can know for certain what we're dealing with," she said. "I can do it right here today if you're comfortable with that." Lisa nodded, even though the idea of having part of her skin cut out was terrifying. She knew she needed answers more than she needed to avoid a medical procedure. Dr. Peterson explained the biopsy process in detail. She would numb the area with a local anesthetic, then remove a small sample of the tissue that would be sent to a laboratory for analysis. The results would be available in about a week. The biopsy itself was less painful than Lisa had expected, though watching the doctor cut into her skin was unsettling. Dr. Peterson worked quickly and efficiently, explaining each step as she went. Within about 15 minutes it was over, and Lisa had a small bandage covering the biopsy site. "Now comes the hard part," Dr. Peterson said as she removed her gloves. "Waiting for results is never easy, but I want you to try to stay as calm as possible over the next week. I know that's easier said than done." Lisa asked the question she had been afraid to voice. "Do you think it's cancer?" Dr. Peterson paused before answering. "I can't make a diagnosis without the biopsy results, but I will say that some of the features I'm seeing are consistent with melanoma. However, there are other possibilities as well, and I don't want you to assume the worst until we have definitive." Information. The word melanoma hit Lisa like a physical blow. She had heard the term before and knew it was a type of skin cancer, but she had never imagined it could happen to her. She was only 34 years old. She had always been careful about using sunscreen. How could this be happening? Dr. Peterson spent several more minutes explaining what would happen next. If the biopsy results showed cancer, they would need to discuss treatment options, which might include surgery to remove more tissue around the area. She gave Lisa several information pamphlets and her direct phone number in case she had questions before the results came back. As Lisa left the dermatologist's office, she felt like she was moving through a fog. Everything seemed surreal and disconnected. She sat in her car in the parking lot for several minutes before calling her husband. "How did it go?" he asked as soon as he answered the phone. Lisa tried to explain what had happened, but she found herself crying as she talked. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in. This wasn't just a bug bite. This wasn't something minor that would go away on its own. This was potentially life-threatening. Her husband immediately offered to come pick her up, but Lisa said she was okay to drive home. She needed a few minutes alone to process everything before facing her family. The week that followed was one of the longest of Lisa's life. She tried to maintain normal routines for the sake of her children, but her mind was constantly focused on the upcoming phone call with the biopsy results. She found herself researching melanoma online, which only increased her anxiety as she read about survival rates and treatment options. Her family and close friends were incredibly supportive, but Lisa felt isolated by her fear. No one else could truly understand what it felt like to wait for news that might change everything about her future. She kept looking at her children and wondering what would happen to them if the news was bad. Finally, exactly 1 week after the biopsy, Dr. Peterson's office called. Lisa was at work when her phone rang and she immediately stepped into an empty conference room to take the call privately. "Lisa, this is Dr. Peterson," the familiar voice said. "I have your biopsy results, and I'd like you to come in this afternoon so we can discuss them in person." Lisa's heart sank. If the news had been good, wouldn't the doctor have just told her over the phone? "Can you tell me anything now?" she asked. "I prefer to discuss results in person so I can answer all your questions thoroughly," Dr. Peterson said. "Can you be here at 3 p.m. today?" Lisa agreed and spent the rest of the morning in a state of barely controlled panic. She told her boss she needed to leave early for a medical appointment and drove to the dermatologist's office with her hands shaking on the steering wheel. This time, her husband met her at the doctor's office. They sat together in the waiting room, holding hands and barely speaking. When they were called back to Dr. Peterson's office, Lisa felt like she might faint. Dr. Peterson had Lisa's file open on her desk and got straight to the point. "The biopsy results confirm that this is melanoma," she said gently. "It's a type of skin cancer that we take very seriously, but I want you to know that we caught it relatively early." Lisa felt like the room was spinning. Cancer. She actually had cancer. The word that everyone fears hearing was now part of her reality. Dr. Peterson continued explaining that the melanoma was classified as stage 2, which meant it had grown deeper into the skin but hadn't spread to nearby lymph nodes or other parts of the body. The good news was that when melanoma is caught at this stage, the treatment success rate is very high. "What happens now?" Lisa's husband asked. Dr. Peterson explained that Lisa would need surgery to remove more tissue around the original site, to make sure all the cancer cells were gone. She would also need regular follow-up appointments to monitor for any signs that the cancer had returned or spread. "I know this is overwhelming," Dr. Peterson said, "but I want you to understand that your prognosis is very good. The fact that you paid attention to the changes in this spot and sought medical care quickly has made a huge difference in your outcome." As they left the doctor's office that day, Lisa felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Fear because she now had to face cancer treatment and an uncertain future, but relief because she finally knew what she was dealing with, and she had a plan for fighting it. Looking back, Lisa realized that trusting her instincts about that mosquito bite had potentially saved her life. What started as a small concern after a family camping trip had turned into a major medical situation, but catching it early had given her the best possible chance for a full recovery. Today, Lisa shares her story with others to encourage them to pay attention to changes in their skin and to trust their instincts when something doesn't seem right. She learned that not all serious health problems announce themselves dramatically. Sometimes they start as quietly as what appears to be just a simple bug bite.